Okay, so I'm Craig. I'm a PSW. I've been in the healthcare field for more than 20 years. Started off with ABI patients.
I'm Professor Brenda Orazzetti at York University, Assistant Professor.
Hi, my name is Matthew Zua. I'm a registered nurse at the Brampton Civil Hospital, and I work on the...
Hi everyone, my name is Zainab. I am a critical care nurse at William Osler. I have been nursing for about 9 years, and I also am a clinical instructor at Humber College.
Like I said, just a summer job. It was something to make money, right? As you can see, I guess there's a stigma that healthcare is not really for the male gender, right? So, but it was a money thing. After that, I did enjoy it. It does change your character too.
What inspired me to become a nurse was my lifeguard training when I was much younger. So I was a big swimmer, worked my way up, got all my swimming badges, started teaching swimming, and was a lifeguard. And it was through the training I had with the city of Sault Ste. Marie as a lifeguard about how to rescue people if they'd fallen in and drowned, or if they broke their legs slipping on the deck, head injuries, cuts, heart attacks. We even simulated spinal cord injuries where we had to learn how to do spinal rollover if they hit their head and possibly broke their neck due to hitting water that's too shallow and them not anticipating that. So we had a lot of really good practice drills, and we practiced over and over and over again. And there was always that, okay, if it's really serious, part of the routine drill would be you call 911 and you stabilize them, clear the pool, and give report to EMS once they arrived. So it piqued my curiosity. Well, what happens at the hospital? I couldn't stand not knowing what happens at the hospital.
So what inspired you to become a nurse?
Great question. I have studied medicine home in the old country, which is my adopted country. So when I came here, I needed to do something fast to work. And so I entered the second entry program at York University. That's what inspired me to be a nurse. So it kind of chose me under the circumstances.
So what inspired you to become a nurse?
So I know the answer to this is a little bit cliche, but growing up, I have had a lot. I've dealt with my fair share of sick family members. I've had a grandmother who had a stroke for 23 years who was bedbound, a grandfather who actually had fallen and broken his hips, and he was at home, who was bedbound. We took care of him at home. I had my cousin's son was born with hypoplastic left heart syndrome, so he passed within a year and 6 months. So I've actually dealt with a lot, and I think along the way, just caring for them kind of made me realize that this is what I wanted to do. I still wasn't sure, so I did the infamous victory lap for a second year in high school, for my last year in high school again, to make sure that was really what I wanted to do, and ultimately that's what I decided, so here I am.
Believe it or not, I have experienced burnout only once in my career, and I was a new nurse and a fairly young nurse, and I just transferred from the coronary intensive care unit to the intensive care unit. And perhaps it was just so much pressure on you to get everything right, and so many eyes on you to get everything right, and you're told something once and you better remember it because you're doing it the second time, and you better not mess up. So little things like which way you turn the stopcock. You turn the stopcock the wrong way out of an arterial line, you're going to get blood all over the bed. And then everyone would know you've messed up because you have to change all the linens. So I did feel burnout at one point, and I just needed a holiday. I needed a little time off.
Since becoming a nurse, have you experienced burnout?
Yes, absolutely, especially on the neuro unit in Brampton Civil Hospital. As you know, our hospital has the reputation for being one of the greatest hospitals in Ontario. And when you talk about hallway medicine, we are the poster child for hallway medicine, where sometimes you're always having patients in the hallway and coming up constantly. So you do experience burnout. You do come to a point where you feel like, okay, this is a little bit too much, because especially on weekends where you have a lot of patients, you hear cold relax all the time, and when that means that you have so much patient emerge and they're trying to push them upstairs, and then you have a shortage of staff.
Oh, definitely. I don't know how many nurses you can interview or ask, and they won't say they haven't experienced a degree of burnout. I think every nurse experiences it differently, and some can tolerate a higher degree of burnout more than others. I would probably say when I first started nursing, I was okay for the first 4 or 5 years, still getting my legs and my bearings under control. But in the last 2 or 3 years, I feel that my level of burnout has heightened, but at least I'm able to recognize that I'm feeling burnt out.
Since being a healthcare aide, have you experienced burnout?
No, not in that sense. Physically, yes. It is physically draining. But in the sense of burnout, no. It could be frustrated sometimes where you're being pulled from one end to the next, but you're only one person, right? So frustration. I wouldn't say it's burnout.
Experience burnout or frustration, like what were those signs for you? Like how do you show your frustration?
Well, sometimes you'll get short with your coworkers. You know, be like, no, I don't have time for you right now. You can't wait for your breaks. You can't wait to go home. Right? Certain things like that, which they will show you that, you know, you need some vacay.
So my signs of burnout were I had a hard time getting up to go to work in the morning. It was like I had lead in my legs. I wasn't happy to go to work. I didn't care about the quality of my work. Normally I'm very, very fussy. Like I'd wipe my patient's table off at the bedside. I'd have everything all orderly, neat and tidy. My patients were washed and squeaky clean. The sheets were just smoothed out, and everything about my work was perfect, and no one would ever say sloppy or messy. Well, at that time, I wasn't as particular as I normally would be. My room wasn't as neat and tidy. My patients weren't as neat and tidy. Maybe my charting wasn't as good. My heart wasn't in it. I just couldn't wait to go home. I know I needed a holiday. I needed a vacation. I needed a break, and maybe just too much studying. Oh my gosh, study. I did CCU 1, 2, 3, and 4. Then I started intensive care, critical care certificate, and all the ACLS. And then you're just newly married, and then you're having a baby, and just a lot of life changes and stressors on you all at once. Yeah, I knew I just needed a pause.
Okay, so what were your signs of burnout?
Like I said, when you start to snap a little bit, when you start to get tense, because what we do is we do it from the heart, and your facial expression, your disposition, your speech, your body language, all of it should convey to the patient that you're there for them, and to the family that you're there for them. But when you are stressed and you are pushed against the wall and you start to snap, or maybe start to get a little bit resentful. I will not say angry though, because we don't show anger, but sometimes when you start to get resentful about the situation in which you're in, why is it that you got so many people having a sick call? And I remember being in charge one night, and we were flooded with patients, and somebody called in sick, and I just snapped. I'm like, no, you can't call in sick. You come into work because we are short-staffed. So those are all signs that you're burning out when you become short-tempered and kind of resentful and stuff like that. At least from my point of view.
So what are your signs of burnout?
So I think there's varying signs and symptoms of burnout. For me personally, just getting up in the morning and saying, okay, I don't know if I can do another day, or I don't know if I really want to go to work today. That's sign number 1. 2, getting to work and actually just saying, okay, I need this day to end. When you're already looking towards the end of the day, that was another one. When you're going home and still thinking about patients and their families, I personally haven't done this, but I know some staff members who have actually been so burnt out that they call in on their days off and ask about that patient in 490, or how is that patient doing in 492, or what's the family going through, are they okay? That's another one. I mean, just the emotional and the mental stress, I think, is the biggest thing for me. It's not so much physical, but just thinking about things and family members over and over and over and over and over again, which, you know, even now, like, I still reflect on patients and their families. So for me, it's more mentally, and then just overall caregiver burnout.
So, after reflecting, what do you believe nurses should do to prevent burnout?
I think you need to use self-reflection and analyze yourself at the end of each shift to see, you know, did I do a good job today? Was something missing?
Well, see, that's the catch though. As a PSW, I try not to let my day-to-day affect my care because this is my work, this is my job, right? So I try not to make what's really like the underlying things that are bothering me affect the care that I give. All right.
I think able to recognize what they can handle, what they can't handle, and what their limits are. I think recognizing what your limits are is the first thing, or actually, sorry, knowing what your feelings of burnout is number one. How you experience it, how you act on it, and what your limits are to actually prevent burnout. What we've recently started doing within our units is actually rotating patients, so you're not getting that emotional attachment because you're not caring for that patient 2, 3, 4 weeks in a row. Coming from critical care, a lot of those patients are there for a long time. I've also worked on a ward. I'm sure many of you guys are currently in clinical placement are on a ward, and you recognize that a lot of the patients are there week after week, repeatedly. And eventually, I think when you're there for 4 months, I've had some of my own students ask me and say, okay, so what happens to these patients, right? Like, where's their family? Like, how come we're doing all the work? And once I think you get to that stage, it's time for a turn. Like, you gotta change up your patience, not take things personally. And that's when you sort of gotta, you know, as I tell my own students, reflecting on your social determinants of health. It's not easy for everybody all the time.
Know your limit, know how much you can take, and know that when you're getting there, like you said, my way of dealing with the burnout now is that when I'm away from here, I take time out, I take care of me. Nurses take care of everybody else except themselves. And what I do is I live a very healthy lifestyle. I go to the gym, I work out well, I sleep well, I eat well. Those are all things that you can do to kind of prevent burnout.
Prevent burnout in their nurses?
So I think so for sure, I think the number one thing that's going to come up is staffing. You guys probably hear it, and I'm sure everybody else who's listening to this can probably hear this as well, is staffing issues is a huge issue. Workload, dividing up the workload equally, if possible, I say. We've recently started an initiative called Wellness Wednesdays, where we actually have somebody come externally and they're available to us between 2 p.m. and 3 p.m. and we do stuff like yoga or adult coloring, or we practice mindful thinking, and that has actually really helped. I know other organizations have actually bought in gyms and stuff like that to help their staff. An employee assistance program is great as well because it provides anonymity for staff to call in. The reality is not everyone can go home and speak to their family members because they don't understand what's happening in the hospital world.
Or the unit can do to prevent burnout?
It all has to do with staffing and budgeting and patients' load. Before the Pew Memorial Center was built, everybody came to Brampton Civic, but now that the Key Memorial Center is built, you see most of the outpatients going there, and so the patient acuity that we receive at Brampton Civic has increased. We're getting very, very sick patients. And if you're getting very, very sick patients and you still carry the same patient load and there's no change in staffing, obviously that is going to create a lot of stress, not just for the patient, but for the nurses too. So we have been advocating for patient-nurse, the correct ratio, to ensure patient safety. So those are all things that you can do to stop burnout, and also, talk to your peers, talk to your superior. But most of all, recognize when you're experiencing burnout to step back and take a break. It's really important, because if you keep going, one of these days you're gonna snap. And I have seen a nurse snap because they kept, maybe bills needed to be paid, and they just kept working. And I have seen nurse snap under pressure. It can happen. You think that it could never happen to any of us, but yes, it can happen. Yeah.
All right. So, what do you believe the unit or the hospital could do in general to prevent burnout in their nurses?
I think nurse managers definitely have a really important role in the tone and the communication and the respect. And if you have really good two-way communication and frequent open communication with your manager through a lot of little huddles or informal meetings and formal meetings, the manager can really set the tone and show appreciation verbally and in writing. Celebrate lots of small wins and appreciation for the staff and how hard they're working. Acknowledge when things go wrong and no one's getting coffee, lunch, and dinner breaks because you're working short. Acknowledge the sacrifice that some nurses are making and how hard the conditions can be. When a colleague calls in sick, you may not always be able to replace them, so every single nurse on that team for the day may have to pick up extra patients. You may have sick calls evenings and nights. We're heading into Corona, COVID-19. Nurses might all start getting ill if we start nursing all of the really ill people as well. So we need to just be really appreciative of each other's efforts and acknowledge the positives, celebrate the positives. And as far as the hard times go, be supportive and kind towards each other and not run each other down.
So essentially, Brenda, what you're saying is,
Let's reignite the flame.
essentially what you're saying, Zainab, is,
Let's reignite the flame.
essentially what you're saying is,
Let's reignite the flame.
so essentially what you're saying is,
Let's reignite the flame.